Ever get that feeling, that like the world needs fixing and it's up to you to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, today's deep dive is all about that.
Okay.
We're talking Carl Sagan,
Right.
but not just like the cosmos Sagan.
Sure.
We're looking at him as a social one.
Interesting.
And for those of you listening, you already know your Enneagram stuff, so we can skip the basics and go deep. Like, what does Sagan's life tell us about the strengths, the struggles of this type?
Well, what really struck me about Sagan is how much his scientific work was like activism.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It wasn't just about like discovering things, it
Yeah.
was using that knowledge to make humanity better.
Right.
That's a real social one move.
Totally. Like, think about it. His stance against Vietnam,
Uh-huh.
the anti-nuclear stuff, even warning about climate change way back when,
Right.
that was not exactly popular back then.
No, definitely not. Not mainstream at all.
What do you make of that? I mean, how does that fit?
For a social one, going with the flow, like conforming, that's just not an option.
Especially, yeah, when it goes against your values.
Exactly. It's like they have this inner compass, this sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
It just compels them to act.
And he didn't just talk about it either. He was out there marching,
Right.
writing, working with his wife, Anne Druyan, on nuclear disarmament.
Yes.
There's this real need to do something,
Yes.
not just, watch.
Totally. And it's not about ego. It's not personal gain.
Right.
It's moral. Like they feel responsible to guide society to a better, more ethical way.
That brings us to, well, another classic social one trait, the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Sagan, he wasn't content just staying in academia.
No.
He wanted to bring science to everyone.
Right?
And, I mean, he nailed it with Cosmos.
Absolutely. Think about how many people that show got into science.
Millions.
Yeah, millions. It wasn't just entertainment.
Right.
It sparked a real love for science. It's the social one at their best, Enlightening, guiding, sharing that passion to wake everyone up.
Yeah. And it wasn't just, like, making science fun.
No.
He really believed that a scientifically literate public, that was essential for progress.
Absolutely.
For us to make better decisions as a society.
That's the thing for Sagan. For social ones, education, it's not about facts.
Yeah.
It's a duty. It's equipping people to think critically, to know truth from lies.
Mm-hmm.
It's about giving people the tools to create a better future.
And that ties into, how dedicated he was to scientific rigor. Meticulous research.
Oh, yeah.
Demanding accuracy, never compromising on facts.
Right.
Some might even say, like, a stickler for the rules.
That stickler part, it comes from this deep need for order, for structure, for a world built on solid principles. The social one, doing things the right way, it's not a preference.
It's more than that.
It's a moral obligation.
I see.
To make society ethical, responsible.
But isn't there a downside to all that rigidity? Like his critiques of pseudoscience, astrology.
Even organized religion sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like he couldn't stand anything that didn't, meet his standards of evidence.
That's the social one paradox.
Yeah.
They want everyone to think rationally, make informed choices,
Right.
but then they can't tolerate anything that contradicts their own worldview.
It's like, think critically, but make sure you agree with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That tension between open discussion and my way is the right way.
Right.
And we see that so clearly in Sagan's life. But before we get into that, I want to bring up something that really helps understand his social one side.
Go on.
His connection to Auguste Comte.
Okay, now that's interesting. I've heard of Comte.
Right.
But how do they connect?
Well, both were all about a scientifically guided society, reason as the key to progress. And both were amazing at explaining complex ideas to, everyone, not just academics.
So both wanted a society where rationality ruled and science was the way to get there.
Precisely.
And they both dedicated their lives to making it happen. Exactly. Now, Comte had this idea of positivism.
Right.
Which is like knowledge has to be based on observable evidence.
I see.
And that really resonates with Sagan's whole approach. It's about grounding our understanding of the world in facts, things we can verify.
So it's like they both believed promoting scientific literacy, that's how we elevate humanity, solve our problems.
That's a major takeaway, and it really shows the social one archetype. But there's another layer, and this is something we often see with this type. their anger.
Anger. Now, I wouldn't describe Carl Sagan as, an angry guy.
That's the point.
He always seems so calm in his presentation.
Exactly. It's controlled passion.
Oh.
For the social one, anger isn't about outbursts or, personal attacks.
So how does it work?
It's channeled into conviction, like righteous conviction.
So when he was, critiquing pseudoscience or challenging religious stuff,
Right.
It wasn't personal.
No. It was about defending truth as he saw it.
Upholding a worldview based on reason and evidence.
Exactly. And this controlled passion, it made him a better communicator.
So it's like he's saying, I'm not mad, I just really believe this is right.
Absolutely. That conviction, the moral authority, it's social one through and through. We see it in their activism, their teaching, even their critiques.
Okay. So we've got this brilliant scientist.
Yes.
Passionate advocate for science. Sometimes a bit rigid, defending truth. How does all this fit with the school teacher thing?
Think back to Cosmos.
Okay.
It wasn't just science.
Yeah.
It was a lesson in critical thinking.
Ah.
He was showing his audience how to question, analyze, approach the world scientifically.
He was leading by example.
Exactly. Showing us how to be responsible, use knowledge to make the world better.
Right.
And that's the core of the social one as a teacher. It's not just information. It's inspiring a way of thinking, a way of being that fits their values.
But doesn't that risk, sounding preachy or condescending?
Definitely a risk. That's the line they walk. They want to help, to guide. But that conviction can push people away.
Like, I know better than you.
Right. And that leads to, our last point for this part, perceived superiority and intellectual distance.
Okay.
The social one often feels separate from people they see as lacking rigor or ethics. It can be good. It keeps their standards high.
Right.
But it can also isolate them, make it hard to connect.
And we see that with Sagan. Yeah. He celebrates what humanity can do, but he also sees our limits.
Right.
Our, tendency to cling to superstition, to be irrational. It's like he's both part of us and watching from afar.
Yes.
Pushing us to be better, reach for the stars, but also acknowledging what holds us back.
That's the duality, that mix of idealism and criticism. We'll dig into that more in the next part.
Looking forward to it.
We'll see how he dealt with being a social one in a world that doesn't always, embrace reason and facts.
This is really giving me a new perspective on Sagan. We'll be back soon to keep exploring his life, his work, and what it all says about this fascinating, sometimes confusing world of the social one.
So picking up where we left off with that tension between wanting to guide people and that kind of tendency toward intellectual isolation.
Yeah.
Especially strong in social ones.
Right, like Sagan.
Exactly.
It's interesting because, he was so good at making science accessible.
Oh, absolutely.
For millions of people,
Sure.
really sparking that curiosity. But at the same time, there was this feeling, maybe it was even real, that he was kind of aloof.
Right.
Especially with ideas he thought were, not scientific.
Yeah, it all comes down to that classic social one struggle. Okay. They want to make society better, but they also kind of hold themselves apart. They've got these strict standards they have to stick to.
Right.
To really get this with Sagan, we got to look at how he dealt with people he saw as pushing pseudoscience.
Okay, so his criticisms of astrology, UFOs, even organized religion sometimes.
Exactly. Those were areas where, to him, it was obvious people weren't using evidence. They weren't following those rules of science that he valued so much.
Right, and while he was, articulate in his criticisms, thought-provoking, he could also sound, dismissive.
Oh, yeah.
Even condescending at times.
It's hard for them,
Yeah.
Someone's so committed to reason to see people just ignoring it.
Must have been frustrating for him.
At least frustrating, maybe even infuriating.
And that's where that controlled passion comes in, right?
Exactly.
Like we were talking about before. Their anger's not explosive.
No.
It becomes this very disciplined defense of their truth.
It's righteous almost.
So when Sagan was critiquing these things, it wasn't personal.
No, not at all.
It was about protecting science, defending that way of thinking he saw as so important.
That's it. He was safeguarding the way we figure out what's true.
For him, that was vital for progress.
Absolutely vital.
But, and this gets back to the isolation thing,
right?
That certainty, that moral high ground, it can create distance between people.
It definitely can.
So how do we balance that?
Yeah, how do you hold on to strong beliefs and still have open conversations, be empathetic?
Yeah, did Sagan ever figure that out?
Well, it's a tough one, no easy answers.
Right.
But even while he was criticizing certain beliefs, he always emphasized critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Question everything he'd say, even the stuff you're sure about.
So it wasn't about blindly accepting science.
Yeah.
It was about using those scientific tools, that way of thinking, on everything.
Exactly, including your own beliefs.
Even the stuff you're most sure of.
Especially that stuff.
And maybe that's the way forward for the social one.
It could be.
Finding that balance between what you're convinced of and still being open to other views.
To new information, to the possibility of being wrong.
Exactly.
And this brings us back to Sagan as a communicator. While he was critical of some ideas, he was also incredible at inspiring people.
Yeah, that sense of awe.
To make them want to learn, to explore the universe.
Cosmos was like that.
Absolutely. That's the power of the social one as a teacher. They don't just give you facts.
No.
They awaken that curiosity in you, that desire to understand.
And with Sagan, it wasn't just teaching science.
No.
It was teaching a way of thinking, a way to be in the world that's both skeptical and open-minded.
Skeptical, but still open. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of his legacy, not just the science he shared.
It's more than that.
But those thinking skills he encouraged, that invitation to see the world through reason and evidence.
And that deep appreciation for the cosmos, yeah.
So even though that social one tendency towards distant superiority, it can be a problem. Their passion for teaching, their commitment to truth, that ability to inspire, those are powerful forces for good.
Oh, absolutely.
People like Sagan are fascinating because they show us both the good and the bad of the social one. They give us clues on how to have strong beliefs, but also stay open to dialogue, to empathy, even to being wrong. As we keep going with Sagan's life and work, we'll see more of these nuances.
These tensions, these glimpses into how the social one can make us think.
Right.
And how they can inspire us to be better, more thoughtful, more engaged.
More responsible, yeah.
And speaking of responsibility, we talked about Sagan's dedication to education, which wasn't just about facts. It was about creating a way of thinking.
That scientific literacy he thought was so important.
Essential for a good society.
It's more than just understanding science.
It's about taking those principles of critical thinking.
The evidence-based reasoning.
And using them everywhere in all parts of your life.
But how do we do that?
Yeah, that's the question.
Especially in a world where misinformation spreads so fast.
Right, where critical thinking feels like it's disappearing.
Where emotions seem to be more important than facts.
It's a huge challenge for sure.
But I think Sagan's approach gives us some ideas.
Oh, yeah.
He knew the power of stories, making complicated things easy to grasp. He knew you had to meet people where they are.
Right. Start with their curiosity, their desire to understand.
So it's not about lecturing them, talking down to them.
No, it's about inviting them in, taking them on that journey of discovery.
And that's where the social one's passion for teaching really shines.
It does.
But it's not just about inspiring other people. It's about challenging ourselves, too.
To keep learning, keep growing, to always refine our understanding.
And that brings us to another important part of Sagan's legacy.
Okay.
That willingness to question even his own beliefs.
To follow the evidence no matter where it led.
He wasn't afraid to admit he was wrong.
Or to change his mind when new information came up.
That's a powerful lesson, especially now when it feels like everyone's clinging to their beliefs.
Even when the evidence says otherwise.
It's about recognizing that learning never ends.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, and it's about approaching that journey with humility.
With curiosity. With a willingness to let go of what you think you know.
To discover what's actually true.
Precisely.
This conversation is so rich, there's so much to unpack here.
I know, right?
And we've just scratched the surface of Sagan's life and work.
Barely scratched it.
Before we move on, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. How do we cultivate that same willingness to question ourselves, to be open to new information?
Especially when it challenges our whole worldview. Yeah.
That's tough.
It is. And it's something we'll keep exploring as we dig deeper into Sagan's journey.
Right.
And what it reveals about the social one.
But for now, I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
What beliefs are you holding on to that maybe need a little healthy skepticism?
What parts of your life could benefit from a more evidence-based approach?
That's definitely something to think about as we continue our deep dive into the mind and legacy of Carl Sagan. You know, it's really something how Sagan was willing to shift his thinking, even on big things like extraterrestrial life.
Oh, yeah, he started out pretty optimistic.
Right, but as time went on, he became more, I don't know, cautious.
It shows you how much integrity he had, scientifically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about being right. It was about getting to the truth, even if it meant changing his mind about stuff he really believed.
And it reminds us that certainty, well, it's hard to come by.
Especially with the universe, there's so much we don't know.
But that doesn't mean we stop searching, right?
No, not at all.
It means we have to be humble, be open to surprises.
Even to being wrong sometimes.
Exactly. And that brings us back to what the social one is all about.
That drive for a better world. A world based on reason, justice,
understanding.
And Sagan's life, his work, it really embodies that.
He wasn't content just observing the universe.
No, he wanted to share it, make people feel that awe.
Help us understand where we fit in all of it.
And he did it with such passion, such a way with words.
He got that science wasn't just cold facts.
It was stories, it was connecting with people emotionally.
Making them curious, making them want to know more. Think about that pale blue dot picture.
Oh, yeah.
The one Voyager took of Earth from way out there.
Such a powerful image.
And Sagan used it to remind us how fragile we are.
How connected everything is.
How precious our planet is.
He was a master at weaving together science and that human element.
Creating a story that spoke to everyone no matter what.
And that's the real impact of the social one, not just the knowledge they give you.
It's the way they make you think, make you feel, make you act.
They push you to be better, to create a world that lives up to our ideals.
And in a world with all these problems, climate change, social injustice,
misinformation everywhere,
we need that social one energy now more than ever.
We need people who will stand up for what's right.
Who believe in evidence, in making decisions based on facts.
Who are passionate about teaching, about helping people think critically.
People like Sagan, who can combine that scientific rigor with compassion.
Who can remind us that we're all in this together.
While also inspiring us to reach for those stars. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Carl Sagan,
this social one who dreamed of a better world,
let's take a moment to think about how we can live up to those same qualities.
How can we be more curious, more engaged in building a world that's just sustainable?
A world full of wonder.
What's one small step we can take today?
What conversation can we start? What action can we take to make a difference?
I hope those are the questions that stay with you.
Long after this deep dive is over.
Because Sagan's legacy isn't just about remembering what he said.
It's about living those values.
Embracing that same spirit of questioning, of compassion.
Of never giving up hope for a better future. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been great exploring this with you.
Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning.
And keep reaching for those stars.